Hello, everybody. I am so happy to be here today with Jennifer Lindsay, who is the president of the Center for Knitting and Crochet, which you may not have heard of, but if you are a knitter or crocheter, you need to know about it. So we're going to let Jennifer tell us what the CKC is all about. So welcome, Jennifer, and why don't you start right there? What is the Center for Knitting and Crochet?
Hi, Edie. I just want to thank you so much for inviting me here today. You've been a longtime member of the Center for Knit and Crochet, and I really appreciate you taking the time to let me introduce a little bit about our organization to new audiences.
Right.
So the Center for Knit and Crochet is an emerging digital museum for knitting and crochet. We are an open source access environment. It's really designed to promote people's access to digital collections that already exist, to create new digital collections from the things that people have at home, and to provide access for scholars and the public to hidden collections of knitting and crochet they may not know about. It's also a maker-centric organization, and we firmly believe that makers have a lot of information to share about these crafts, lots of collections of their own that merit study and appreciation. And we really want to put the power back into the hands of makers to document their own history, share what they think is important about these crafts, and really help to preserve them digitally for future generations.
So this seems like such a unique idea to me. Whose idea was it to start such a thing?
Well, the initiation story is an interesting one. Our official founder is Karen Kendrick Hands. She wanted to start a museum of knitting and crochet. And as part of her process, she consulted with some museum professionals, industry professionals through the TNNA, various scholars, designers, people in the publishing industry. And she decided to host a symposium in November of 2012 to bring a lot of constituents together, everybody from guild members and people who just love to knit and crochet to a lot of these people in the various industries that support these crafts in contemporary life. So there was a symposium in Madison, Wisconsin in November of 2012, and a number of speakers were invited to talk about building a knitting and crochet museum. I was involved in some conversations with Karen while she was preparing for this event, and I really urged her to consider developing the Center for Knit and Crochet as a digital entity rather than a physical entity. And she invited me to speak at the conference along with some other illustrious speakers. And I was not one of them. I was newly out of graduate school, so I was very excited to be a part of it. And the end result was that after several days of discussion, the 50 or so people who attended the symposium voted on whether to initiate the Center for Knit and Crochet as a physical museum or a digital museum. And about half the people really wanted a physical museum. And but I was trying to persuade people of, first of all, the economy, and second of all, the reach and power of having a digital entity. At that time, the Textile Museum was building their new facility as part of George Washington University, and they were spending $35 million on the building alone. So to have that sort of a museum was really out of reach. And as a scholar at that time, I was very aware of how inaccessible knitting collections were online. It made it almost impossible to find objects to study. And in order for our field to to grow and for objects in museums to be shown, there has to be scholarship about them. And because there wasn't enough known about things that are already in museums and they were not accessible to the people who love and care about them by being digitized, this scholarship was really in a stranglehold. And also appreciation, people knowing that there were collections available, understanding that there were historical objects that were accessible to them was just not there. And it's really, really important for our field to really be able to have access to these items and to be able to enjoy them and study them. So I was very passionate about providing the digital access.
Right.
And since then, our board has had many board members who have really supported this vision. Karen and her husband have continued to support the Center for Knit and Crochet all these years with very generous donations, even though it was Karen's wish to have a physical museum. So that is true, honorable support for this vision. And it's been honed and developed over 10 years by a lot of hard work and ingenuity of board members and volunteers. So
right. So you are celebrating your 10-year anniversary. Congratulations. Who are your members? Is it just academic types, or do you have like regular civilian knitters and crocheters who belong?
It's not, our membership is not at all restricted to those qualities. All of us who happen to bridge the communities of museum work or collections work and being passionate crafters ourselves, know that that the knitting world is full of creative and interesting people who have a lot of skills to share. You cannot do these crafts without being an interesting, creative person. So the membership is open to all. We, of course, want to make these resources available to scholars, but I know our organizational view is that scholars are everywhere, and new scholars are made every day simply by somebody becoming fascinated by something that they have access to that they didn't have access to before. So every person listening to this right now is a potential knitting or crochet scholar. And these resources are there for you.
Awesome.
24/7. So
how do you recruit or find the digital resources or bring museums into the fold digitally?
So we are just beginning to move along the spectrum on that process, and we're moving out of our embryonic phase as an organization and into a more collaborative phase where we really are trying to persuade various small museum collections, private collectors, and also individuals, just everybody out there to start adding to these collections, because the more material we can share, the better our work as makers is preserved. So we have right now 2 main collections available on our website, and you can access them by going to digital.centerforknitandcrochet.org. Those 2 collections are currently called CKC's Library and Museum Collections and CKC's Crowdsourced Collection. Right now, the Library and Museums Collection comes to you via Digital Public Library of America. We are simply hosting these items in one place. The Digital Public Library of America has hundreds of museums, historic houses, libraries, archives, government resources that share open source items from their collections with DPLA. It's possible for innovators and just general members of the public to run custom searches on this vast database of information. And we do just that. We run a custom search for items related to knitting and crochet, and we host them via our website when you go to the Library of Museums collection on our website and you click on an item, it takes you directly back to the institution that's sharing it. So you are never really separated from where that item and any other related objects are. So that means you have a window into whatever you're interested in. Anything that's been collected and shared through DPLA is accessible to you. And now,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Right now, that's a huge variety of items, everything from sheet music to images of children laboring in, knitting factories, any type of thing that you would ever be interested in researching. It really shows the intersection of craft and every aspect of American life.
I was just going to add, it's easy to get lost in searching for things. It's so much fun to just go look at the resources. And even if you're not going to use them for anything, just to see that glimpse into
it is really great. It is really great. And we really encourage people to use that resource. Another nice feature of it, so the crowdsourced collection I want to quickly mention is the collection that we have established for anyone, anywhere to add their own items. So for example, I'm a huge lover of Ravelry. I think they provide a tremendous service to people who are actively crafting. But one of the things that is not really very easy to do on Ravelry is to document, say, the 15 doilies that you got from your grandmother. Those are still very valuable to everyone who crafts. And having access to those for the general public is really an amazing gift that you can give to crafts people everywhere. So our resources allow you to put your own things on and talk about the stories that you have for those objects and tell them in your own words. Many times, if you look at items in museums, they're not really necessarily stories of the makers, they're stories of the owners of the objects. So details about how the things are made that we might know just by looking at them are not included in the record. This makes it harder for us to find them if we're searching for things using our own terminology. And it also means that the maker history or the craft history of the object isn't really very well documented. The beauty of this museum collection now is that many museums are really interested in hearing your opinions about the things they're sharing. So there are sometimes avenues to get in touch with these collecting institutions and say, hey, this really isn't right. You say it's knitting, but it's actually crochet. So we have the ability as makers now through these digital resources to really correct incorrect information, and also to make sure that all communities who make are represented in these digital collections. And that's really a huge goal of the Center for Knit and Crochet.
So everybody can be involved, which is great. Anybody watching this knows more than probably some of the curators at the museums about certain things. That's
correct. So, and being able to make sure that all of the knowledge of our community is brought from the print world into the digital world is really, really important. For anybody that's been around for many years in knitting, we all have these treasures of, treasuries, Barbara Walker's treasuries. All of this is print media. And now that print media is becoming more and more difficult to find. And most people are learning about knitting and crochet from whatever is available online. So part of our job as an organization, and part of all our jobs as makers, is to make sure that our knowledge gets captured in this new format so that we don't lose it, because every time we lose our history, we have to redo it as opposed to moving on to invent new things. So even, techniques that were developed in the 70s or 60s, we don't understand now that they weren't always there. And I think when people understand that there are knitters and crocheters discovering new things all the time, and we document those new things, it gives people a greater sense of agency over their craft. They understand that people invent things and that they themselves can invent something new instead of reinventing something that someone else has done, or they can use someone else's invention as a jumping off point. And that's why this history is just so important to collect.
So I'm really intrigued with this idea of a digital only museum. We are all used to going to museums to look at things, even if we can't touch. Excuse me. Is the idea of a digital only museum or collection new? Is this something that is happening all over the world, or are you sort of blazing your own trail here?
Well, when we started in 2012, it was very new, and there wasn't even like a software system that we could afford to use to create what we've created. So our digital collections did not come into being until 2018, and we used open source software for that, which makes it affordable for us. I would say that the unfortunate event of the pandemic really made many, many more traditional museums aware of the power of having things digitally available. And in my own experiences, the museums that were most using the digital technology around the time that we were beginning to develop our digital museum were some of the science museums that I was working with, because most museums have vast collections of objects that they do not show. Unfortunately, knitting and crochet are many of those objects, because a museum cannot easily or could not easily show things that they didn't know a lot about. You can't just put something in a museum and say, here's a thing. So that's not a museum professional's way of showing items. So a lot of the items that aren't very well documented, and many of these might be craft items in certain museums, just don't get shown because there aren't enough resources or time, and there isn't enough expertise to give an interesting story about these objects that make them accessible to the public. But in the case of the science museums, for example, many of these museums have thousands of bees, or they have thousands of images of things. And they began to use crowdsourcing around the time that we were interested in starting the Center for Knit and Crochet to get people to look at these images of these collections and do sort of citizen science research on them. So that was happening. But I think now just about every museum sees that the digital realm is a great way to show things that they cannot show in their physical space. And so that really opens more doors for us as an organization, because museums and other types of cultural institutions want to share their things. And what we would offer through the Center for Knit and Crochet is you could share them to a dedicated and knowledgeable audience, people who really love these things and want to see them. And that's a very important relationship that we want to develop.
Great. Well, this has been great. What else do you want us to know about the Center for Knitting and Crochet?
Well, I certainly want everyone to know that we are a member organization, that we believe that doing this digitally allows collections to stay in their local place, so that they're not being moved to a separate institution where they're away from the communities where they were created. And that every person out there can be a member of CKC, and you can use the resources we have and add to them. So a membership in the Center for Knit and Crochet, we have two types of memberships. We are sustained. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are sustained by memberships, donations, and some grant monies. A sustaining membership to the Center for Knit and Crochet costs $35 for your first year and $20 each year to renew. And an annual membership costs $10 every year. We will be having our annual membership drive in July, and we will be offering a 20% discount on all memberships. As a member, you receive a monthly newsletter that you can read and also contribute to. You receive free or discounted admission to the various programs that we have and are developing. We will have anniversary related programs and also some exhibitions and collections coming online within the next year. And anyone that is a member of CKC can volunteer on projects and also serve on CKC's board of directors when openings occur. So I do want you to know that about it. And I really hope that you will take a look at our collections and add to them, and also think about joining CKC and supporting the development of this resource, which is for you and for everyone.
Great. Thank you so much. And I want to say I will definitely add links to many of these things we talked about, so you will be able to go directly there and see for yourself how great these resources are. Just make sure to save yourself some time, because once you start looking at some of these old pictures and items, you're going to be there for a while.
Thank you so much, Edie. This was really a wonderful opportunity to tell people about CKC, and
Great. I'm glad you could join
totally
me.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. To learn more about the Center for Knit and Crochet, follow the links in the video description. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more on all things knitting and crochet.